Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of this new series of stories that we are going to be doing on the channel. I'm not going to waste a lot of time. I'm going to get right into it. I just want to say that the purpose of these stories is to share more facts, like they're all going to be true stories or there's going to be truth behind them. And I'm going to try to include a lot of details in there that will hopefully help you learn something that you maybe didn't know before. Because this is a fact channel, we want to make sure we're throwing some facts in there. Now, today we're going to be talking about a naval officer who passed away in May 2018 due to a fatal mistake that he made while he was doing some recreational scuba diving. Okay? And again, this guy was a naval officer, so you know he was pretty familiar with the water. So, without further ado, let's get into today's story. Our guy's name is Brian Bugy. Now, here in the beginning, we have to talk about something so that you understand some things later on in the story, and this is where it comes back to learning. Okay, there are two types of diving that we're going to talk about today. One of them is called OC diving, or open circuit diving. Okay, and this is just regular diving where you go in the water, you got your scuba gear on, obviously, but the tank is where we're going to focus. You have regular oxygen in your tank, you use a regular mouthpiece, a regular system. You do this in open water, shallow depths, calm, benign water conditions, and it's an extremely safe hobby to get into, especially once you know what you're doing. Now, when you are learning open circuit diving, it's usually really lighthearted training. It's fun time. Everybody kind of laughs and jokes around, and it's just fun in general. Now, the other kind of diving we're going to talk about is CCR diving, or closed circuit regulated diving. Okay. Now, this regulates the gases that you breathe in with added helium. It only uses the oxygen that your lungs actually consume. So, like when you breathe and you breathe back out, you don't actually consume all the oxygen that you inhaled. Like when you exhale, you obviously exhale carbon dioxide, but you also exhale some oxygen. Now, what this system does is it repurposes that. It gets the oxygen back that you didn't use. And it moves everything in a circuit where okay, in open circuit diving, when you breathe out, you got the bubbles that come out because you're exhaling air. Now, when you exhale, when you're closed circuit diving, it doesn't blow the bubbles out. It recirculates your air, and basically it helps you breathe for much, much longer underwater, and you can also dive at deeper depths when using this technique. Now, this is much more difficult to master. It requires very serious training. It is not for beginners. It's not for everyone at all in general. This is an extremely advanced diving tactic that the Navy SEALs actually use. So, yeah. So, when you're diving, a lot of things can obviously go wrong. I mean, a number of things could go wrong. But when things go wrong, certain things happen more frequently than other things. So we're going to talk about two conditions, if you will, that could happen while you're in the water diving. The first one's called hypoxia. Hypoxia is caused by a shortfall in oxygen. Okay, so basically if anything goes wrong in the water and you're not getting the correct amount of oxygen, this can happen, and you start to get fatigued and confused, and basically when you get hypoxia, you die. Unless there is somebody right there who somehow knows what you're going through and can get you out of the water within a minute or two, you're dead. The other one is called hypercapnia, which is actually poisoning caused by an excess of carbon dioxide in the breathing loop. Okay? This results in confusion, judgmental errors, and very soon afterwards, again, followed by death. So either of these two conditions while you're in the water, you do not want to have it happen to you. It's just, you just don't. Okay? So, back to Brian Bugy. Who was he? He was 35-year-old. I mentioned he was a naval officer. He joined the military in 2003 at the Naval Station Great Lakes in Illinois. He became a chief after about 10 years, and in August 2017, he made his commission as a submarine electronics limited duty officer, which was a big step for him. Okay? His official title was a U.S. Pacific Fleet Integrated Undersea Surveillance. Let me try that one more time. This is a mouthful. A U.S. Pacific Fleet Integrated Undersea Surveillance Systems Officer for the U.S. Navy. In short, he oversaw unmanned undersea vehicles. Now, he was actually very decorated in the military, including 2 Navy Commendation Medals, 1 Joint Service Achievement Medal, 7 Navy Achievement Medals, and several unit and campaign awards. So he was a very good soldier. He was good at what he did. He knew what he was doing. He had a wife named Ashley Bugey, and at this time he had a daughter named Izzy and a son named Hudson. The previous summer, before this May of 2018, he moved with his family from Washington State to Hawaii, which is where he was currently living. And this is when the wife found out she was pregnant with their 3rd child. Okay? So family and friends say that Brian was a real go-getter. He did anything he wanted, and he didn't let anything stop him. He did not believe in a bucket list. He said, if you don't need a bucket list. What you need to do is go do what you want to do, which is something to be admired. Okay, he had a great interest in underwater photography, and he took up scuba diving as a main hobby outside of work in order to pursue this. His wife was very happy for him that he did what he loved, and overall, for Brian, things were going really well. I mean, he had this great job that he wanted, he had a great family, he had a great pastime. I mean, he was doing what he wanted, and he was living life, okay? There was a man, Lieutenant Commander Brian Nuss, who served with Bugey, who said that he constantly heard stories and saw photos of all these scuba diving adventures, and that he did it quite a bit. Now, what he did in the Navy, he actually wasn't diving while he was in the Navy. I mean, I'm sure they had to do something in training or whatever, but like I said, he was controlling unmanned undersea vehicles. So at this point, in May of 2018, he had been diving for 2 years already, a little over 2 years. And he was just starting to learn the CCR diving, which again is a very advanced diving technique, okay? And in the past, he wasn't always the safest person. Again, he did what he wanted, and so at times that meant taking a risk. And he, turns out, had gotten lucky a few times in the past when it came to diving. Him and his wife were actually allowed to dive in sea notes, I believe is how you pronounce it, which is a natural pit or a sinkhole filled with water. Without a clear route to the surface, it's considered to be a different type of diving, and he was not cleared to do this. He was only classified as an open water diver, as was his wife. But nonetheless, he came out of these situations good, and he felt pumped, and so his confidence about his scuba diving abilities were blossoming. I mean, he was feeling like he was on top of the world. But however, unfortunately, he became a victim of casual CCR instruction and was not taught correctly or seriously enough to know all that he should. So in other words, it comes back to what we said, like when you're learning basic scuba diving, it can be very chill, it can be fun, it can be lighthearted, but when you're learning the CCR, closed circuit diving, you have to really know what you're doing, because it can become dangerous very, very quickly. So it's recycled exhaled air that extracts the carbon dioxide and introduces other oxygen and gases into a loop. Okay, so it's actually really cool, but it's not as simple as just breathe in and out. You know what I mean? You can go much deeper and remain underwater. I mean, I already mentioned that, and so he was ready to put this newfound skill, if you will, to the test. So in May 2018, they were out for a dive. Him and his buddies were going to look at a shipwreck. They were diving down to a shipwreck called the Sea Tiger. Okay, and so on May of 2018, Brian suited up. He got in the water. He grabbed his camera off the boat, and he started diving straight down towards this Sea Tiger boat. But during his descent, he would soon notice that something was wrong. I don't know exactly how long it took him, but I would imagine it was fairly quickly, okay? But by the time he realized what the problem actually was, it was way too late, and And at this point, Brian was already doomed. So within minutes of him getting in the water and going straight down, he was already doomed. And we're going to learn why in a second. But basically what had happened is Brian, in his excitement and everything ready to go, he was ready to go down here, he was ready to photograph this sunken ship. Somehow, when he went to go get in the water, he forgot to turn on his oxygen tank. Now, with this closed circuit that he's breathing through, it'll basically, like I said, it recycles your oxygen, so the bubbles don't come out. So when he's breathing out, he's not noticing that there's no bubbles. So basically, he's rebreathing the same thing that's in his loop over and over and over again. And at being a novice CCR diver, he just forgot to turn on the oxygen and didn't realize until he already had a fatal dose of carbon dioxide. And ultimately, Brian would get hypoxia, which is what we cited earlier, is not something you want to get. Brian would have become confused, dizzy, and disoriented, and even if he had tried to get back out of the water, it's likely that he would have been so out of it by this point that he would have been swimming in the completely wrong direction, either being sideways or even straight down deeper. So a little while later, his body was recovered. It didn't take that long because Brian, as soon as the air that was in his loop was gone, Brian suffocated. And while he was suffocating, he was going through I can't even imagine how rough it would have been, because he was breathing in this carbon dioxide and it was literally making him like almost drunk in a way. So he would have been extremely confused and not knowing where he was, not had any sense of direction. And yeah, it just wouldn't have been good. So his body was recovered approximately 120 feet under the surface of the water, close to where the wreck was. So it goes to say that he possibly could have started swimming even faster straight down once he started to realize that something was wrong and freak out, not knowing that he was even going down. Like it was rough for Brian. And yeah, despite the resuscitation attempts, once they actually got his body back up, despite their attempts at resuscitation, they were unable to bring him back. They tried, and they took him to the hospital, where they tried and tried again, and ultimately those were Brian's final moments, is when he jumped in that water and started swimming down, not knowing that his oxygen was off. And it can happen that fast. I mean, one simple mistake and you're a goner. So what did we learn today? We learned the difference between OC diving and CCR diving, and we also learned that you definitely have to have the oxygen tank on when you jump in the water. I hope you guys enjoyed this story, and if you are interested in hearing more stories like this, or you have suggestions on topics for stories, please put them in the comments. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Have a good one.